Audio test, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Welcome members of the public and those viewing online. And as you know, any councillor which is viewing online, you can take part in debate. You cannot vote. This is being live streamed and a copy will be available within the next 48 hours. Right, agenda. Apologies for absence.
Chairman, I've had apologies for absence from Councillors Ellis, Williams and Snaden.
Thank you. Number 2, public participation. We have 2 with us tonight. First is Steve Waller. You have 5 minutes, Steve. And you're talking about Wolvers Hill Bridge.
Is that better? Everybody should have, hopefully, a map in front of them just to help the talk make a little bit of sense for those who aren't familiar with the area. If not, I can pass these around or somebody can pass them around. Looks like everybody can see it. So good evening, councillors, chair, councillors. My name's Steve Waller. I live in Banwell. Our community objects to the proposed closure of Wolvers Hill Road at the M5 bridge for all but bus and active travel use. Wolvers Hill Road is more than just a road, it's a lifeline for our community, providing a crucial north-south connection. Restricting it will have far-reaching and unintended consequences. Our petition opposing the closure has already gathered over 1,800 signatures without any publicity whatsoever, and that's from residents and businesses across Banwell, Sandford, Winscombe, Cheddar, Hutton, Locking, Wirral and Weston, and our MP. So what are the concerns that people are expressing? Closing the bridge splits Banwell into 2, which divides our community for a start. And for many, Wolvers Hill Road is a direct link to work, schools, Junction 21, Wirral Station, healthcare and village facilities. The only alternative routes are the Rat Run, which is in red on your map, and the A371, A370 dogleg, which takes people out towards the Helicopter Museum, up to the main road, A370, and then back out towards the direction they were hoping to go to in the first place. Traffic coming from Sandford and Winscombe will potentially avoid the longer congested dogleg by entering Banwell and using the Rat Run, not the bypass. Closing the bridge will force all traffic from the new development, which is going to be in Wolvers Hill, which will be in about an extra 3,000 cars based on ONS data. That will force that traffic south down onto the new bypass and onto the already congested dogleg or the congested Rat Run. Recent closures of Wolvers Hill Road for bypass works have led to more congestion and delays on these routes. This was a glimpse into a more congested future for our residents. Congested circuitous routes create more pollution, contradicting one of the main environmental goals of the closure, which is partly to try and reduce emissions. Infrequent bus services and any limited active travel in this area will not compensate for those increased emissions. Local village businesses, including some new ones who've set up within the last year, 18 months, are extremely concerned about losing customers from nearby areas such as Wirral, because those customers may choose not to travel the extended distances required by the bridge closure. Additionally, community workers such as district nurses have commented they'll face longer travel times, reducing their productivity and limiting their access to patients. Commuters warn that closure will reduce the appeal of using Wirral Station. Travel to and from the station will become longer in terms of distance travelled, and the journey times will become far more unpredictable because they'll be hitting the congestion on the A371 and the A370. However, we and the petitioners want to be part of the solution, not the problem, so the petition offers a 5-step alternative plan, keeping the road fully open while aligning it with the Council's core goals for sustainable, safe and environmentally friendly neighbourhoods. The first one is to widen the bridge for cyclists and pedestrians, promoting active travel while keeping it open for vehicle use as well. Implement traffic calming within the new development, reduce speed limits on Wolvers Hill Road, resubmit the local plan for public consultation, including any future road improvements that the council may be investing in, and finally reassess if closure is needed once those road improvements are open and operational and the promised bus services are also in existence and we can see them driving around our local roads. Having waited 100 years for the bypass, We're not about to be given a promise on future road improvements. We'd like to see them in place first. Thank you.
Steve, you have 1 minute.
So in conclusion, we urge NSC to keep Wolvershill Road fully open, given the impact closure has on residents, businesses, the environment and local connectivity. The unintended consequences of this closure are real and far-reaching, as growing opposition evidence in the petition shows. Let's stop this idea now at the pre-planning stage. It really doesn't need to go to planning consultation, and keep this community lifeline open. Thank you for your attention this evening, and a big thank you to those councillors who have already been in contact and expressed their support for the petition, if not actually signing it. Thank you.
Steve, you will receive a response from officers and the exec member very shortly.
Great, thank you.
And on the same subject, Councillor Nick Manley, Chairman of Banwell Parish Council. Yeah, 5 minutes, Nick.
Thank you. So good evening. My name's Nick Manley and I'm Parish Councillor and the Chairman of the Planning Committee for Banwell Parish Council. In my day job, I also work as a town planner for the Planning Inspectorate. I wish to speak to you this evening regarding our community's serious concerns about the proposed closure of the Wolvershill Road M5 bridge. This closure would sever a vital link for residents of Banwell and other nearby settlements, preventing access to essential facilities in Well and beyond. Facilities such as supermarkets, services, the train station and junction 21 of the M5. Additionally, it would dissect Banwell Parish, cutting off direct access to community facilities for residents living within our boundaries, both north and south of the bridge. As we understand it, the plan would see all existing traffic which currently uses the bridge, along with all future traffic from the proposed 2,800 homes of Wolvershill, to be redirected towards the helicopter museum and into Weston, leading to longer journeys both in distance and time, regardless of the time of day. North Somerset's traffic modelling from 2022 for the Banwell bypass was based on the assumption that the bridge would remain open. Closing this bridge would force traffic to seek the shortest and quickest route available. For anyone familiar with the area, this would mean vehicles which once would travel over the bridge would now seek to access the A370 east of the motorway junction, diverting off the bypass and back into Old Banwell to access Riverside, turning it into an unwanted rat run. Riverside, like much of Banwell, is a single track road and is ill-equipped for high volumes of traffic, raising significant safety concerns and undermining one of the primary objectives of the Banwell bypass, to reduce traffic in our village. Moreover, the modelling indicates that the roundabouts near the helicopter museum are already operating above capacity, making it counterproductive to direct yet more traffic towards these congested areas. Furthermore, we are also concerned about the proposed low-traffic neighbourhood for the Wolvershill development. While the goal of reducing traffic is commendable, we question why a low-traffic neighbourhood cannot coexist with keeping the bridge open. The Wolvershill development is essentially a new housing development, not a self-sufficient town. While there may be a small shop and other basic amenities, residents will still require access to essential facilities in Well and beyond, as well as convenient options for commuting to work. Without clear information on future active travel provisions, it remains uncertain how a low-traffic neighbourhood, combined with a bridge closure, can genuinely encourage a shift from car use to active travel without negatively impacting the old village of Banwell. Additionally, we question the financial viability of the level of bus services needed to effectively encourage behavioural change and get people to switch from their cars, and whether the council would have the commitment and appetite to fund these services long term. Any potential benefits of a low traffic neighbourhood could be undermined by increased emissions from longer car journeys and idling vehicles being asked to manoeuvre through already overcapacity roundabouts and congested roads, contradicting North Somerset Council's broader environmental objectives. While some mitigation measures may be proposed, we must recognise the financial constraints facing North Somerset Council. If the bridge is closed, any promised mitigation efforts, such as upgrades or traffic management projects, are likely to encounter funding challenges. These financial pressures raise serious questions about the Council's ability to undertake the necessary improvements to manage additional traffic along the A370, the A371, as well as the already overcapacity roundabouts. In conclusion, the proposed changes to the Wolvershill Road Bridge along with the introduction of a low-traffic neighbourhood, pose significant risks not only to our community but to residents of the wider area. These changes would dissect our parish in two, undermine the benefits of the bypass and encourage traffic back into the village. We strongly urge decision makers to reassess these proposals, keep the bridge open and support a traffic strategy that will deliver for both current and future residents of Banwell. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick. And as I said to Steve, you will be hearing from the exec member and officers soon. And can I also say, of the 48 emails we received, the leaders responded to many of those. Right, any declarations of interest, members? No, minutes of last meeting. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Thank you very much. Forward plan, leader.
Yes, it's for noting, Chair, so I move that.
Everybody happy? Oh, what are we? Right, we come to motions. First one is motion to council. Leader.
Thank you, Chair. So hopefully this is self-explanatory, this motion. So as lots of members will know, the government is currently undertaking a short, focused consultation on the powers that councils need to run hybrid and remote meetings. They're also consulting on proposals to enable proxy voting, either in general terms or in exceptional circumstances. So the motion just sets out some proposed parameters to inform a response to the consultation on behalf of the council. I would point out that the government is keen to hear from individual councillors and political groups as well as councils formally, so I would absolutely encourage members to respond to the consultation with their views. And in essence, what the motion is asking for is that our response should simply be that we want the powers to determine for ourselves locally what are the appropriate arrangements around hybrid and remote working that suit the needs of us as a local authority. And I think this is part of the wider message that we want to keep putting to government, which is just give us the freedoms and powers to decide things for ourselves. There is no requirement for government and Whitehall regulation of these issues. We certainly shouldn't be defining how we run meetings in 2024 based on Victorian local government legislation, which is exactly what has been happening hitherto. We also know that we had lots of good experience and bad experiences during the COVID pandemic over the use of remote and hybrid meetings. And I think the more control that we can have locally over what's appropriate for meetings on a case-by-case basis, the better. I would say just one final point. I think we all recognise that in order to enable remote and hybrid working, we've still got work to do, certainly in this council, to make sure that the technology is up to the job. Obviously, we make no assumptions about that. But I think in principle, the more freedoms that councils have got to make decisions locally, the better. So I'm happy to propose that, and I hope that members will be happy to debate and support the motion. Thank you.
Do we have some members to stand for debate? Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a brief statement of support to the Leader's motion. In my day job, I work as a civil servant and I've experienced various different hybrid working, but I completely agree with the principle that all organisations, be they local councils, branches of the government or companies, should be empowered to strike the right balance for their workers and for their organisational objectives. So very much in support, and I'm pleased to see the motion.
Chris.
Thank you, Chair. To the Leader, do you see this actually going full? So, I mean, you say about legislation was Victorian. I mean, there was a reason legislation's pretty much still in the Victorian age because it worked. I understand that technology has come on, especially since COVID, and we all started using Zoom, etc. But do you foresee that full councils will ever go down this road of proxy voting and no one being here?
Yeah. Councillor Charles.
I just wanted to say I was very supportive of this, though I would take away the exception argument and actually allow voting at any point remotely. We are living in a modern world. I work remotely. I see my colleagues maybe once every 2 months. And I think politics should reflect the modern world we live in. I don't think it should be the exception for illness. I think it just should be how we do business as an option. And so therefore I will abstain because I approve of it, but I don't approve of that section. I think it should be for everything.
Councillor Shopland.
Has just raised, the Victorians set up a system of local government which worked. Members were seen to be working, they were accountable, and the public could judge them. And what worries me about modern technology, that councillors and other officials can hide behind modern technology. They are not transparent to the public as they should be. And as far as I'm concerned, all meetings should be held in public with the members of the council present, not hiding behind a box at home. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Leader, would you like to respond?
Yes, thank you very much.
Oh, sorry, I missed one over the back.
So I just thought I'd throw just a few things in here. So completely support the motion. As several of you will know, I go on parental leave in January to March when my wife won't be, she'll be at work. So actually, without remote voting, I won't be able to represent my residents because I won't be physically, I will not be here because I cannot come here because my daughter can't go to nursery till April, so I'm stuck in the middle. So I don't think it is unreasonable to have remote voting or proxy voting, and I'm not hiding from anyone. So I just thought I would call that out because actually there are people who do need this.
Thanks very much. Yes, I mean, I agree with lots of the points that are made. And I think the important point is that what we're calling for is the council to have the power to decide. So those of you that think we absolutely shouldn't have remote and hybrid meetings, that's great. When we've got the power to decide, you can make that case and we will go with the majority, which is exactly as it should be. And I've got no issue with that. But what I hope members will be cognizant of is that we are in a very different world, aren't we? The Victorians did lots of great things, but the reality is we're not living in a Victorian era anymore. Councils have changed, councils have evolved, our ways of working, our powers, our responsibilities have evolved, and it's absolutely nonsensical to say we should still be tied into rules and regulations that were set 150 years ago. There's no logic to that. As colleagues have mentioned, Stuart, Kieran, the ways that most people are working now have moved on, and it's appropriate that the elected body does that as well. In terms of the point about proxy voting, I think there are arguments both ways. My own view is that providing we have enabled hybrid and remote participation at council meetings, proxy voting is only going to be relevant if somebody can genuinely not participate because of ill health or whatever. So Kieran, in the future, I would hope, can absolutely participate in a meeting remotely and can vote remotely because the circumstances that suits them to enable to do that. I'm happy to stand behind the recommendations and I hope members will support them, and that will enable officers to respond to the consultation, and if you've got other points to make, you can do that yourselves independently.
Right, that's the motion. Members, all in favour? I think that's almost unanimous. Anybody against? No. Well, carried. Right, now motion from Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure that all of us have paid infinite detail to the recent budget, but the part that kind of particularly stood out to me was the increase in the bus fare cap. I'm also sure that members keep up to date with what happens in other councils as well. And I was particularly inspired by the Labour Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, who a day after the bus fare cap was announced immediately said that he was keeping it at £2 in Manchester. Now, if I thought that that was possible in North Somerset, I could tell you that this motion would be very different. But I am acutely aware of the financial pressures that we are currently facing, and as such present this motion as a way of us engaging in conversation with the government on this policy. My ward in particular takes in Hill Road. If you've never had the pleasure of coming to Cleveland, I thoroughly recommend it, but Hill Road really does hurt the calves, I can tell you, when you're walking up and down it. But the vast majority of people that live on Hill Road are reliant on buses for actually being able to move about the town. An increase, therefore, in the bus fare cap is going to actually be quite expensive on their lives. Even myself, I have to declare something of an interest as a commuter who relies on buses to get from his house to his job. This is going to increase my expenses by roughly about £500 plus every year, something that I am going to have to factor in within my living expenses. So as such, I present this motion as a way for us to continue in a dialogue with the government over their increase, and hope that I can have the support of councillors.
Motion seconded. Yeah, can I have 7 members, please? Thank you very much. And I believe we have an amendment from each member.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Pike, for raising this very important issue. And I'm sure many members will be in agreement that it's very important to keep bus fares as low as possible for as many people as possible. But I think there is some confusion about the way that some of the systems operate locally, particularly in order to achieve what Andy Burnham has managed to achieve in Manchester. And so I think it's really important to correct some of the inaccuracies and focus our efforts in the right way locally to achieve the best deal for our residents. As such, I'd like to propose this amendment, and bear with me, it is slightly lengthy, but it is an effort to explain to people how we can best achieve the changes that we want to achieve in our local area. So I propose that Council notes that the Labour government has maintained a bus fare cap with a national investment of £151 million, when the previous Conservative government had allocated no funding beyond the 31st of December 2024 to do so, and this has saved fares from rising back to fully commercial levels at this stage. The Council further notes that nationally, increasing the £2 cap to £3, a commuter commuting on a bus 5 days a week would have a yearly increase of several £100s. Locally, fare caps in North Somerset and the wider West of England area are the subject of agreement through the legal framework of the Enhanced Partnership Scheme, which is made in accordance with Section 138G1 of the Transport Act, jointly by the West of England Combined Authority and North Somerset Council. And for members' information, that's our equivalent of the way in which the greater authority would work in Manchester. The national fare cap provides a general subsidy to commercial bus operators in order to keep fares low on all routes, although some operators now in receipt of subsidy are achieving national profits for their shareholders. The Executive Member for Highways and Transport started discussions with bus companies on the potential impact of the loss of the national fare cap on local services in mid-October 2024. And through the Bus Service Improvement Plan, North Somerset Council and the West of England Combined Authority have already committed to continue to provide a number of additional fares packages above and beyond the national cap up until 31st of March 2026, which will help to mitigate the impact of the national cap increase. Therefore, Council believes that the increase of the bus fare cap may result in declining passenger numbers if applied locally in full across all routes. It may have a negative impact on some local essential bus services which are not commercially sustainable without a national or local subsidy. Some routes are currently commercially sustainable, which residents in North Somerset rely on. It will have a negative impact on some young people travelling to access education and others reliant on buses to reach their place of employment using longer routes where fares are more likely to rise above the current level of the £2 cap. At a time when many residents in North Somerset are struggling with soaring costs and expenses, elderly and disabled residents will continue to benefit from the current free bus pass schemes, and increases in the minimum wage and carers allowance will mitigate impact on the most vulnerable. Although an increase in fares will discourage sustainable travel and remove one incentive to use public transport to access our town centres, potentially increasing the number of cars on the road. Therefore, I'd like to propose that Council resolves to request that the Leader of the Council writes to the Transport Secretary to recognise the investment to maintain a national fare cap and the associated measures within the October budget to mitigate the impact of the higher cap on working people, on minimum wage, older and disabled people and carers, but outline the Council's concern at the impact of this decision on young people accessing education and general usage of public transport, and ask the Government to give local authorities the flexibility and funding to achieve the best set of measures locally to address these issues fairly. Secondly, to request that the Leader of the Council writes to the Mayor of the West of England to seek agreement that as joint local transport authorities, North Somerset Council and the West of England Combined Authority, request the Enhanced Partnership Board review the impact of the change in national fare cap subsidy on commercial bus operators, residents and routes in North Somerset and the wider West of England, reviews allocation of the local bus service improvement plan funds to fare subsidies currently, and seeks to maintain the lowest possible local fare cap and additional discounts for children and students accessing education. The Enhanced Partnership Board is the board by which we can make decisions locally, as does Anti-Burnham in Manchester. And thirdly, that the Executive Member for Highways and Transport continues to engage with local bus companies, the West of England Enhanced Partnership Advisory Group and its working groups to consider the ways to maintain the essential bus routes that provide a lifeline for many communities. I've spoken for a long time, so I'll only make a few key points on the amendment. Of course, I'm absolutely in favour of keeping bus fares as low as possible for everybody. It's really important for our economy and our environment. I'm really pleased that we've seen locally operators running discount schemes below the level of the current cap, such as the £1 child fare, season tickets like the Avon Rider and the tap-on, tap-off scheme, and other concessionary schemes like the older person's bus pass and disabled person's bus pass will of course still apply. I know that operators are also keen to keep their prices low to encourage as many passengers as possible to use their services. We have powers through the Enhanced Partnership to set our own local fare cap, as Andy Burnham has done in Greater Manchester. What we need is sufficient flexibility and funds to be able to do so. I'm very keen to continue to engage with the DFT, WECA, the Enhanced Partnership and bus operators to get the best deal for our communities in North Somerset, and I suggest we target our efforts accordingly.
Councillor, are you prepared to accept that amendment? Would you like it repeated?
Well, I dare say, Chair, it might have been helpful if the executive member had given me some pre-warning on this, and we might have had a discussion in the way that I understand Councillor Burden's motion has been amended, because it appears to me that the executive member has rewritten this motion almost entirely. So as such, no, I'm not prepared to accept that amendment.
Okay. Right, so the amendment, do we have a seconder for the amendment? Right, so we'll debate the amendment. Oh, sorry. Councillor Petty.
While I do support the amendment, I do want to respect and recognise that actually when an amendment of such a... When there is an amendment proposed which is more than a matter of a few words, I think it would be reasonable in future that we look to... I'm looking to improve process going forward. I think that when we are looking to make a significant change, we should share it around all councillors so that we have better sight on it, just so that we can all actually be clear on what it is we're discussing or debating, because everybody has different learning techniques, and when somebody reads quite a lot, it can be quite hard to catch that. However, I do support this amendment.
Can I just...
Yes.
I don't understand a word you said, to be quite honest. I mean, I probably would if I read it and took time to do it. But I mean, this amendment's quite simple. We don't like £2. Sorry, we don't like the £2 going to £3. I mean, does your amendment actually answer that question and say we want to complain about it, or are you just going along with loads of fancy words saying, yeah, we don't know what we're doing with it, can you do something with it? Can you just explain it in layman's terms, what you're trying to say?
Any other comments? Just before you do, any other? I'm not quite sure whether doing this is actually saying you want to speak or not. Tom.
Hi. I generally support the amendment, but the first paragraph and the sort of this creeping in of national politics, I don't particularly like, if I'm honest. The sort of plug for the national government. Forgive me, Hannah. I support the whole amendment except for that first paragraph, which I would like to see removed.
Leader.
Yes, I was just going to say I do support the amendment because I think it is a balanced amendment that reflects the reality of the financial challenges that are facing the government and the difficult decisions they have got to make. But in layman's terms, for Councillor Blade's benefit, it also says we don't agree with the proposed changes to the fare cap and we are concerned about it. And it instructs me to write to our local partners and to government to build on the work that Councillor Young is already doing to engage and try and find local solutions to mitigate that. So in spirit, it doesn't change the effect of Councillor Pryke's motion, but it is more balanced in terms of reflecting the wider issues that are at play and recognising some of the mitigations that the government has tried to put in place. And I would say to Councillor Nicholson, that, you know, it's just the reality, isn't it? You know, it is political and we can't pretend that it isn't. The motion's been brought forward as an opportunity to have a pop at the government in the first place. So it is by definition political. And I don't have any issue at all with Councillor Young wanting to give balance to that in her amendment. So I'm very happy to support the amendment. And I know that Hannah will come in and probably say this, but I would also point out, and we can always learn lessons about how to share amendments, but I know that she did send the amendment to group leaders before the meeting. So I'm sorry if that then didn't find its way round to other members, and we will certainly learn that lesson and try and improve that going forward.
Councillor Cartman.
Well, it was less an amendment, more of an audio book, wasn't it, I think, for me. And I think one of the principles I have when I come to this chamber is I like to know what I'm voting on. I'm afraid there was too much information there for me to process and understand clearly what I was actually voting on. The message I took away was that you're broadly a little bit critical, without saying, of the fare cap, but wanted to have a pop at the Conservatives, which I understand. But I think for me it's too much, and I can't vote on it without understanding the detail of what you said. And I worry there's been a lot of detail put in there that's going to be hurried through without me having to read it. So I can't support it, which is a shame, because if it had been more succinct, I possibly would have.
Councillor Dole.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with the motion and I agree with the amendment more. But again, reading through this just now, I feel like there's an awful lot of words, but we could, again, add even more teeth of kind of, you know, increasing that impact to saying, actually, the government, you know, we're more unhappy than we are. This, again, like what Ash just said, it sounds a little bit like we're just kind of unhappy. I feel like, actually, this is going to have quite a big effect on a lot of people. And just to give some examples, so, you know, average person about my age earns about 12,000 to 13,000 a year. If you get 2 buses to and from work, or to or from college, which I know a lot of my friends do, you know, if I want to go into Bristol, I got to get the X1 and then another bus to wherever I'm going in Bristol. You know, that's a lot of money to be adding, even though it's £1, it's extra £4 a day. And if you're doing it 5 times a week, it does add up. It's in total £3,120 a year on bus travel, which is about a quarter of the money that I would be earning. So I know it seems like a small amount, but it is an awful lot more than I think we realise, and I think we should be an awful lot more harsh with the words that we're using rather than just we're unhappy. I think it needs a lot more teeth, and we need to be going, you know, asking Dan Norris to do a lot more, because the other local authority, combined authority mayors are stepping up, and I'm just not seeing Dan do that, and I think we need to ask him to do that.
Councillor Shopland, were you stretching or did you want to speak? Oh.
The motion and the amendment. And that is, I am in a position where I don't honestly know whether I could run fast enough to catch the bus. So perhaps I should declare an interest. But, Mr. Chairman, this country, local government faces financial crisis, and we have to make sacrifices, and maybe this is one that we should make. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Thornton.
I was just wondering if it's possible to project the amended motion on the screen so everyone can see it and read it carefully, as you know, they're saying that they don't really understand it, just in the interests of fairness. Is that possible?
We don't have that technology, I don't think, do we? Sorry, Helen, this isn't the town council. We don't have that technology. I'll call Michael later, but do you want to sum up on that, Hannah?
Yeah, in short, Mike's picked up a few of the points that I would make. Councillor Pryke made a point of saying the Labour government had increased the fare cap. I thought it only fair to be clear that there would be no, under the Conservative government, there would have been no further cap at all, and fares would have gone back to commercial levels as of the end of this month, which is why certainly officers have been engaging with the DfT for some time on what was going to happen around this issue. So I thought it was only fair to be clear that the government has maintained a fare cap at some great investment that was previously unfunded. In terms of simplification of what I've said, my key points, as I said at the beginning, are yes, this is a really important thing to maintain. We need to be clear about what's the most effective way to try to maintain it. Like Greater Manchester, we, together with the West of England Combined Authority, have a local scheme, so we set the fare caps. We haven't done it yet. The next enhanced partnership meeting, which is our legal mechanism to do that, takes place next Friday. So we have a chance to influence that. Our local scheme is jointly owned by the Mayor of the West of England, Dan Norris, and Mike Bell as leader of the council. So we can write to Dan and ask him to campaign about it, but we also need to do things ourselves as a council and as members of that enhanced partnership to say what we want in our local scheme. That is affected, of course, by the amount of funding that we have available through that local scheme to put into fare subsidies. In Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham had total control over that funding and was able to determine he would keep the £2 fare cap. We have to share that decision with the West of England Combined Authority. And so what I'm suggesting, and why I'm afraid it is quite a complicated process, which is why I'm suggesting that we go the route and do it, is that together with the Combined Authority, we review all that funding that we have for fares packages and other things within the bus service improvement plan and work out whether we can set a fare cap which is equally low or some way below the £3 fare next Friday. And that is what I would like to achieve. We may or may not be able to do it within the funding available to us, and we absolutely should be writing to government to say, if we can't do it, give us more money or give us the flexibility to be able to use those funds in the way that we need to locally to deliver what we want to do for our communities. I think it's a shame, and I understand why people don't understand the technicalities of how this works. It would be a shame to write to DfT or to the West of England in a meaningless way and not achieve what we're all here to achieve. So I'm sorry it's lengthy. It's partly because the processes are difficult to negotiate and bureaucratic, and we need to be able to do that. And what I'm asking is that we direct our effort in that way and support the effort that I'm putting in on behalf of our communities to be able to do that.
Right, that's the amendment. That's to sum up on the amendment. Can we now vote on the amendment? Go on.
On a point of information, Chairman, I haven't a clue what has just been said. Would somebody please explain clearly and precisely exactly what we're being asked to vote on?
Sorry, can I help? So, as a point of information, I can write as leader of the council on anything that I choose to write to people about. So I am going to write to the Department for Transport and the West of England Combined Authority in the spirit of the two motions that have been tabled. And can I suggest that we don't vote on it, the amendment or the substantive motion, and then if necessary we can bring it back to a future meeting, because I do recognise that people have got concerns about not having seen the detailed wording of the amendment, but we can take action anyway, notwithstanding not taking a vote on the motions today, and that might just get us through this difficulty.
Given what has just transpired, and thank you to councillors for this, I would therefore be prepared to accept the amendment on the basis that the leader will write that letter. Right, all in favour of that? Thank you very much. Those against?
He's accepted it.
That's carried, so I'm taking that as the substantive motion and also voted on, yeah?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I say to members, when this was, I was on WECA when this was discussed, and it took 5 minutes. Right, the next motion is from Councillor Burden.
Sorry, can I just get... So that's just passed by the council without any vote taking place?
Yeah.
Can I register my vote against then, please?
I asked for those against.
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear votes against.
Well, there were people put their hands up. Right, Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Chairman. Let's hope we don't get the same problem we had with the last amendment. Chairman, on last Monday, I was sitting down drinking a cup of coffee in the morning, having taken the dog for a walk, reading through the South West Council newsletter, as we do, and I noticed South Gloucestershire Council calls on the government to enforce planning regulations on EDF. That, Chairman, got me thinking relatively quickly that I am concerned about the salt marsh proposals in Kingston Seymour. I believe it is a way out for EDF to not do what it's meant to and to carry out the long wish of certain staff in the Environment Agency who wanted to neglect that bit of coast for the last 30 years, to my knowledge. So I put forward a hasty resolution to Council. I've noticed Amanika has put forward a set of wording dramatically greater thought out than I did, because she had more time to do it, and I believe Steve Bridger is seconding that. If that is formally moved, Chairman, I will willingly take that on board as my motion.
Right. That's moved and taken on board. Just can we have 7 members for debate? Right. So if we now go to...
actually moved the amended wording, so
Yeah.
Steve just needs
Yeah.
to second it.
So you've moved the amendment. So Steve, would you like to second?
Yes, Chair. Yeah. Hopefully this will be more straightforward and less controversial. But I'd like to, first of all, thank Councillor Burden for bringing his motion to Council and for agreeing to me effectively jumping in there just to speak to it on behalf of Councillor Waite, who would be doing it herself but is unwell. A copy of this amendment was circulated this afternoon by email about 2:30, I think. I won't read it out unless I'm asked to, but if that is required, I'll do that at the end if I can. So it's more words, it's 6 paragraphs, but as I say, hopefully less controversial. I guess, do I have to look for a seconder first of the amendment?
No, you're seconding.
Oh, I'm okay.
It's taking it on board as the substantive motion.
Okay, fine, okay.
Do you want me to speak to it, Chairman? Do you want me to speak to the motion, or would that be later?
No, you can speak in a minute, don't worry.
Okay.
So I'll thanks, Chair. I'll continue. So I worked with Councillor Waite. This is very confusing, isn't it? I worked with Councillor Waite on this wording. Annemieke obviously has exec member responsibility for the climate, marine environment, and flood risk management. I think the amendment keeps the spirit of Peter's original tightly crafted motion. but just expands it out a little more, I think, and bringing a slightly wider context and recognises the huge upset and anxiety that EDF's proposal has caused to residents of Kingston Seymour, and by its very nature, but also EDF's rather ham-fisted sort of approach to their whole proposal. I would like also briefly to thank and acknowledge Anna Mika on her engagement on this issue since this came to light in September, and for bringing it to the attention of the leader, the executive, and the council leadership team. And Peter, thanks again for bringing it to the attention of the wider council membership. As I say, EDF's proposals only came to light in early September, and some colleagues may not be aware that the owner of Hinkley Point C nuclear power plant wants to create a salt marsh on hundreds of acres of farmland and have focused in on Kingston Seymour after their initial plans for a salt marsh further south at Paulet Hams near Bridgewater were criticised and then dropped. Landowners who would be directly impacted by the proposals were sent letters in September, completely out of the blue, with a rather sort of threatening tone, talking about compulsory purchase of their land. The proposals will not just have an impact on agricultural land, livelihoods and biodiversity, but also on a thriving network of other small businesses that have relatively recently been created within the footprint of the proposed salt marsh. So, for brevity, I'm going to pass on all the really technical stuff, the technical detail, but basically EDF have to compensate for the number of fish which will be sort of sucked into the reactor's cooling systems, but they fought very hard against providing the acoustic fish deterrent required of their development consent order, their planning permission for Hinkley C. So I'm of the view, and I think this is shared by Councillor Burden, that EDF should be asked to instead fund all sorts of biodiversity gains in North Somerset that we actually want and need, and other things too. Obviously, they seem to have loads of money. I should also say that there's an interplay here with an issue of wider consequence and concern to about 40,000 households in North Somerset, which is obviously shoreline management and sea defences. And I know Peter has a lot of historical understanding and insight on that topic, and brought a motion together with Councillor Shopland this time last year on this issue. I think coastal flooding and sea defences are going to be a significant area for discussion going forward for this council, and I think we will certainly bring that to scrutiny next year. So, in closing, Chair, the salt marsh proposals have been escalated with our MPs, and it's already been debated in Parliament. But I think certainly I and Councillor Waite, and I'm sure Councillor Burden too, were keen to see this council also write to the Minister to convey our feelings. So I hope that people feel they can support the amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Burden, you've heard that, you took it on board. Do you want to make some comments now before we go to debate?
I'll happily sum up, Chairman.
Councillor Griggs.
As one member in Steve and I's ward said, how do they think flooding Kingston Seymour is going to make up for all the fish they're going to kill at Hinkley Point? And I think that summed up the whole feeling of all the residents around, and I totally support this motion.
Councillor Shopland.
I'm reminded with this of a very famous poem, and it's called The Ancient Mariner. And one of the lines goes, "Water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink." Is that to be the fate of Kingston Seymour? The government, through its agency, I believe, has said that it will not maintain sea defences. That is a serious problem, Mr. Chairman. It affects a great part of North Somerset, up to Nelsey. The sea is uncontrollable, and allowing it to flood parts of this area will in the long term endanger Kingston Seymour, Ken, Clevedon, and make Kenmore's Nelseymoor unusable. There's another side to this question, and that is that the world is losing the battle to grow enough feed or find enough food to feed a growing population. So why do we have to sacrifice good agricultural land which grows food for the whims of some experts who wants to look after fish? That's wrong, Mr. Chairman. The scheme at Hinkley Point should be redesigned and possibly go back to its original, because the inundation of half of Kingston Seymour and part of North Somerset by the sea is completely unacceptable. And I will support any action this council takes to try and stop that happening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Daw.
I want to say that I think it's quite good that EDF have done this, because now we can have more of a conversation and it brings the flooding back into conversation about what's going to happen. I think Kingston Seymour seems to be the first place that's going to get hit quite hard with flooding when, probably 10 years probably now, when we start to see lots more of this worse flooding. I did want to just kind of point towards the Steve said about the biodiversity. I don't think flooding this to be salt marshes would be a negative thing for biodiversity, but instead change the biodiversity back to how it probably used to be several hundred years ago before, or thousands of years ago before the Romans drained everything. So it's a different kind of biodiversity, but I don't really know where I sit on this, but I would rather we look after our flood defences and we have a good case to ensure that they are fit for future. And if EDF want to help fund that, then that sounds brilliant. But, I think we definitely need to make sure that they're not killing fish, because there's not many of them anyways. So, thank you.
Councillor Bird, who'd like to catch a fish.
No. I sat through a presentation on this at the Drainage Board a couple of weeks ago for about an hour and a half. And what strikes me is if they pour all this money into trying to create this salt marsh, given the rise and fall of tides, the strength of the tides going in and out and everywhere, in 20 years this salt marsh won't be there anymore. So what is the point of the mitigation of fish in the first place? And all that will happen is the coast will be half a mile closer in. So I really don't think it's a good thing to happen. I'm all for that money, as the proposal says here, for that money to be spent elsewhere where it'll be better high wildlife value.
Councillor Quillen.
Thank you. I think I'm going to take the opposite view, unfortunately, Mike. I understand there's clearly a debate about the salt marshes, and that's probably, for me, a separate debate. For me, this is simply a case of if regulators and planning authorities decided that mitigation should be in place in order to mitigate the impact of that reactor, that should be enforced, and the decision on what mitigation is appropriate should be the regulators, not EDF.
Councillor Blades.
Thank you, Chair. I can't read the amendment because I haven't got it. Two qualifications. I just want to make sure that the original amendment was quite clear. The second one says we want to spend money on different things. Does the amendment actually also say we don't want this to happen, just to qualify it? Because I haven't read the amendment and I can't get it on this machine at the moment. Does it? Yeah, I can't get emails. So.
Councillor Smith.
The other thing is as well, just because I'm a Clevedon resident, no one's mentioned it does actually affect Clevedon. Councillor Shopman's quite right and alluded that it might actually affect right up to Nelsey, which is possible in the future, I suppose. But it does actually overtop, if you want to put it that way, if we let it happen, at a triple SI site. So I'm curious why no one's mentioned that, because it is biodiverse.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to note that the existing site had a lot of sea meadows which would get completely ruined, and they are diverse, and it would affect Clevedon. I'd also note that this was proposed about 10 years ago and knocked on the head, and nothing's happened. And if the point is to protect fish, making a salt marsh doesn't protect fish. Thank you.
I see no more, so Councillor Burden would like to sum up.
Thank you, Chairman. Comment to Councillor Dawes. He's talking about Kingston Seymour getting wet. The basic gist is, if that seawall goes, find yourself to the Tickenham Star. Jacqueline's Bridge Fish Farm will be 3'6" underwater, and Tickenham Church will be an island. So it is a lot more than just wetting Kingston Seymour if we don't maintain our sea defences. Chairman, nice to hear cross-party views on this one. I think there is a fair amount of support, and interesting to note, very topical. Anybody who reads the Western Daily Press this morning, there was a nice article, Farmer Fears the Future. They will be wiped away by the creation of EDF Salt Marsh. Kingston Seymour. Don't think we've ever been so topical at a council meeting, Chairman. I really think this is trying to do some work the Environment Agency wanted to do for years. Somebody in EDF has just picked it up and thought, we'll run with it. And various people in English Nature have thought this is a good idea. Bluntly, Chairman, when sea defences has been talked about, it should be talked about openly with all concerned, like we do with the shoreline management plans, which turn up and are modified about every 10 years. And that is the way we should amend our coastline if we are going to amend it. It shouldn't be done on the back of a cost-saving effort through a nuclear power station being built in a neighbouring county. And I think my motion initially was just to go straight for ask government to enforce the existing condition. If they don't, or feel the fish defence system was wrongly recommended at the inquiry, I think we should ask for serious amounts of cash to be put into proper nature conservation and environmental improvements within the wider area, not set up a completely new scheme by an organisation that's interested in making power. For example, Chairman, I was one of the people in the EA that signed off on the Sturt realignment scheme. That cost £28 million, 16, 17 years ago, did not involve the building of a seawall. It involved the taking down of a seawall. If they're going to do anything around Kingston Seymour, they're going to have to build a seawall. So, ballpark figures, Chairman, I'm thinking around the 30 million quid and thinking what could happen to improve the peatlands in North Somerset and in Somerset, given a tenth of that. It is crazy, Chairman, to destroy habitat to protect, to mitigate for killing fish. So I think we should write, as is proposed by the amendment, to the government in stating and keep this one under review, because I think it's just something that is going to keep going and we've got to have some decent scrutiny into this, into what happens. And I'm pretty sure Steve's on board with that one as well. Thank you. I so move.
Thank you. Those in favour? Clearly carried. Any against? Thank you very much. Councillor Bell, Council Tax Scheme.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Okay, so hopefully everyone has read this report, so there's nothing too surprising in this. So the recommendations in the report is looking for consent to proceed with a consultation based on some principles that are set out in the report, and I know has been shared with members over the last couple of weeks, both at a briefing led by the team and then also over email with some of the detailed findings and investigations that we've done to support our approach. So at this point, I think it's important to emphasise we're not making decisions about the future of the Council Tax Support Scheme, but we are delegating authority to agree the consultation which we're legally obliged to carry out as part of reviewing our Council Tax Support Scheme every year. We're working currently on the assumption that we need to try and secure a saving of around £1.5 million from the existing cost of the Council's tax support scheme in the context of our wider budget and MTFP challenges. But again, I would just underline no decisions have been made on that because that will be determined as part of the budget setting process as we go forward. We've been working hard to listen to the feedback from members, and I'd like to thank Councillor Petty and Councillor Cartman for, in particular, providing lots of, and Councillor Thornton as well, lots of detailed questions and challenge and input so far in the process. And we are trying to approach the consultation with an open mind and in a spirit of genuinely presenting choices to residents to feed back on, both in terms of the options for mitigations around the scheme and in terms of some of the details of the scheme. We're also going to be continuing our conversations with Citizens Advice North Somerset and other key stakeholders to try and make sure that any changes that we do implement to the council tax support scheme are done in a fair, balanced and proportionate way. What I would also remind everyone is, again, this is part of the budget setting process. So actually the key point of interface on the council tax support scheme and the budget envelope that it's got available for it will be the budget session that we've got scheduled for all members on the 22nd of November, the executive meeting in December, and then, of course, the formal budget setting process for full council in the new year, because ultimately it's that which determines what flexibilities that we've got in terms of the budget to fund the council support scheme. So I'm very happy to propose the recommendations, ask for a seconder, and I understand that there will be an amendment as well. Thank you.
Seconded, yes. Amendment. Who from?
I can assure you this is hopefully one of the shortest amendments ever. In the recommendation, it asks that the Director for Corporate Services and Head of Support Services, in consultation with appropriate members, and I'd like that to list Executive Member for Corporate Services and the Executive Member for Health, Housing and Equalities, because I believe that this is a matter for the Equalities Cabinet Member as well. That is the only change. I'd like to ask whether the proposer accepts that amendment, and therefore we can just refer to it as the item.
I'm very happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay. If I'm able to carry on at that time? Okay. I wanted to say, while I do appreciate the extremely serious financial pressures the Council currently faces, I fear this is not the right place to make the savings. I do not support reducing the support we offer to our lowest income households. I fully support a more efficient system that is fit for purpose, that improves usability for households and officers. I understand Bristol City Council will not be reducing its 100% council tax support to households, despite also being under extreme financial pressure. I support going to consultation, but will ask that the Equalities Impact Assessment for this proposed change is given full and due regard when councillors and officers decide whether to move forward with this proposal for February's budget. I will state on behalf of the Green Group, we do not support the reduction of council tax support to our least able to pay. We think it would negatively impact our goal to reduce inequalities and also impact our prevention work that is committed to a healthier and more resilient society. We have not been provided at this time with sufficient information to give us confidence that Household Support Fund would prevent any loss to our poorest households. Thank you very much for listening.
Councillor Gibbons.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to say that I don't think any of us are happy or comfortable that we're having to think about this and think or even consider reducing support to vulnerable households. It's not a position that I ever wanted to be in, and I know that other members of my group don't find this an easy thing to do. But in the situation we're in, we have to look at and model for the worst case scenario in terms of our financial position. However, I would say that I agree with Councillor Petty that the Equality Impact Assessment is extremely important in this. I'm worried about the effect on extremely vulnerable families. But I would say I remain hopeful that we will receive a settlement that will at least give us some choices in what we have to do. And you talked about this not being the right place to make cuts. There are so many other areas that are not the right place either. And I'm just hopeful that we will be in a position where, at the moment, we hear a lot about tough choices. I kind of feel we're in a position where we have no choices. And I'm just hopeful that come the settlement, we will be in a position to make sensible and significant choices for the benefit of our communities. So although I don't want to, I have to support this.
Councillor Thornton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just, I suppose, following on from what both Bridget and Catherine have said, this is really, this shows you how bad it's got, doesn't it, that we're actually even considering this. I don't know if you know, but the Joseph Rowntree Foundation every year calculates something called a minimum income standard, a minimum acceptable standard of living, and what the income is needed for that. And it's different according to the different type of family. So currently a single person needs 28,000, a couple with 2 children needs 69,000. Now the people we're talking about are on much, much lower incomes than that. And from all the information I've seen in the briefing that we were given, which unfortunately I couldn't attend, but I caught up on the recording and with the slides, that, you know, most people here could potentially lose £20 a month, and that is a significant amount of money. This could end up being a bit of a false economy, because if they, you know, and I think it's been pointed out to us in the report we've seen, because the risk of this is that our collection rates will fall, because the people who will lose this money won't be able to afford to pay council tax. They may choose to put their rent first, or their heating first, or their eating first. And so, you know, I really think that anything we can do to avoid doing this, including, as Bristol City Council are doing, which is consulting the residents of Bristol on how much they want to raise their council tax by. Now, I realise that we don't know what the cap's going to be this year with the new government, and any increase above the cap has needed a referendum previously. But, you know, my preference would be that we raise council tax on everyone rather than cut this to the poorest and most vulnerable. I do support it going out to consultation, but only on the grounds that when it comes back, we do everything we can not to implement it. And as has been said, the equality impact assessment will be absolutely crucial in this, because it could reveal that actually what we're doing is so discriminatory that it is actually illegal under the Equalities Act, which, you know, we have a duty, we're obliged to, we've got a duty to. So, you know, just to reiterate, you know, this is absolutely awful for all of us. No one wants to do this. Let's consult, but let's hope to God that we don't have to do it when it comes to February. Thanks.
Councillor Ashton.
Excuse me if I got this wrong, Chairman, but a lot of us have probably got concerns over the scheme or the intentions. But I thought the motion today was just for it to go to consultation, and we'd be discussing these sorts of details when we actually know what some of the proposals are. We seem to be going back a bit asked about face, because, as I say, I've got specific concerns, but I want to see what the consultation brings up first.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. I thought I'd keep it brief. I just wanted to raise a concern after reflecting on it, that if the capital limit includes the lifetime ISA, I do think that would penalise hard work and aspiration, but I do accept that is for when the details happen.
Leader, would you like to sum up?
Yes, thank you very much for all the feedback, which I absolutely have taken to heart. I absolutely endorse the comments that clearly nobody is going to be wanting to make life harder for the most vulnerable families in our community, and absolutely, as Councillor Thornton Helen absolutely nailed it, it demonstrates how serious the financial challenges that are facing the council are, that we're having to look at savings like this. And unfortunately, that is the reality that we face. And we all hope, as Catherine alluded to, that we're going to be in a different position come the new year, and we've got a different financial settlement. And absolutely, as Bridget mentioned, if we've got choices to make and we can avoid these kinds of decisions, then absolutely we will seek to do so. It's just the reality of where we are. What I will also say is that in addition to the consultation that we're going to undertake, and in addition to the budget setting process, I'm going to be busy writing lots of letters. I will also write to the government about this because, and I know this is something that Bridget has called for too, because there is a fundamental flaw with the way council tax support is managed in this country. The responsibility was passed to local government many years ago, but the funding doesn't follow the system, and what we end up with is a government picking and choosing what it wants to make decisions about. So it determines all of the benefit rates which influence your entitlement to council tax support, but it doesn't fund or control the council tax support. It sets out minimum guarantees for older people, so pensioner households, through the council tax support scheme, but it doesn't do any of those guarantees for working age people. So the whole system is absolutely crazy, and you end up with a scenario where people can live on the same street because of their local government boundaries. Their entitlement to council tax support would be completely different because of the way the system is run. And when their ability to generate income through benefits and universal credit and so on is entirely dictated by government, my view is the council tax support system should also be fully funded and set by government. And I'm keen to make representations to that effect, because otherwise we're in this doom spiral, aren't we, where we're always having to make these difficult choices with not having control over the factors that are influencing the decisions that we're having to make. But exactly as Councillor Ashton Nigel said, this is a consultation, so let's hear what people have got to say, let's hear what stakeholders have got to say, let's see what feedback we get through the Equalities Impact Assessment, and then we can take decisions through the budget process.
Thank you. That's a proposal. All in favour? Well carried. Any against? 2. Right, members, we will now take a 5-minute comfort break before we go strolling back down the pier. And the starting orders, Councillor Canford, Burnback Pier.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if we've got everyone in the room, but we'll go anyway. Just a few points to make, Chairman. This report, I think it's important to mention, is about the pier structure only. The land works and the island works aren't included in this report. So I think we would all like to recognise and support the fact that we received the £10 million worth of National Lottery Heritage Fund last week, which the Chairman, the Leader and the Mayor of Weston-super-Mare accepted from the National Lottery, which is the maximum grant that can be awarded by that fund, which I have to say was a superb achievement by our officers to go from absolutely zero money for this project and now having raised 21.74 million for the pier project itself. This is a major part, as we all know, of the agreed Super Western placemaking strategy, and this really does complete the ambitions that this council showed back in 2019 to see improvements made in a town that had been neglected for some 20 to 30 years. We can see that with the amount of money that has been raised, this is a nationally recognised and very important project for the organisations that have supported us. And again, I don't think we can over-recognise the huge amount of work that's gone into that by our officers. We accepted at the last council meeting to accept the employer responsibility at this stage, but this is to allow the council to go to tender and allow us to build a picture and to be fully informed of the costs of this project. It will allow us to appoint a contractor, which then, of course, will only be a decision of this council if appointed. And therefore, there is no financial risk to this council without any further discussion. Approval of the commissioning plan to restore the pier will be with the monitoring officer and the leader to check those tenders. It is important to keep reiterating the fact that before any awards will be made for spending, even the grant spending, it will come back to this council. So there are safety valves in place, which includes the collaboration agreement, which allows us to withdraw at any time. It also, again, allows this council to make a further decision on spending, but it does allow this council to go out and actually find out what it will cost, rather than us just licking our finger and holding it in the air to see what we think it might cost. There is no risk to this council at all. Current revenue implications are that officers will need to go through the detail of procurement, but that is the only implications for the council. The report limits the risk to the council and allows council to withdraw at this stage or even the next. So in my opinion, it would currently be foolhardy to pull the plug on such a project which is nationally recognised and has financial support. I'm aware there will be amendment from Councillor Ashman, Ash Cartman, which he will bring forward. I've just changed his name. But, yeah, Hashman. Yeah, that's because he gave me a hard time yesterday. So I look support for this, and I am aware that Rachel Lewis is in the room, and Jenny, if there's any detailed questions anyone would like to ask about the report itself. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Crawford-Hawley, would you like to second?
Yes, Chairman, in the interest of brevity and clarity, we've got £24.94 million in the pot. If the February 25 lottery bid is successful, that'll be another 7 million, giving us 32 million. There are therefore no shortfalls. There's no capital spending from this council whatsoever, and there's no intention to spend North Somerset Council's capital. Once the tenders are received, if they're favourable, we simply accept them. If they're unfavourable, then we come back to council for further discussion. And as Mark has said, there's therefore no risk to the council accepting this report. I do think we should be very careful with some of the words we use. I think important to point out that the RNLI is not pulling out of any aspect of this scheme whatsoever, but they are pulling back slightly in their managing of their contribution, their management contribution rather than their financial contribution. And North Somerset Council will therefore take full organisational responsibility, but there are no financial implications for that. I think, I'm not quite sure how the amendment might be worded, and I'm slightly concerned about having any amendment, but I'm happy thus far to go along with the proposition and, if necessary, accept a slight alteration to the wording.
Yes, you have a notice of amendment, yes?
Yes, please. Yeah, I have an amendment. I would like to say, I mean, on reading this, there's so much positive news in this, and I think we're all committed as a council, aren't we, to restoring Burnbeck Pier. But I think a couple of things struck me reading the report. One, repairing piers is very risky. We know that, and that's acknowledged in the report. And I think, given the current financial situation we're in, and we've just had a debate on the council tax report, I think we need to be very aware of that. So I think that's fair enough. And I think also residents across North Somerset are very supportive of this, but I think what they don't want is an exposure to the general core funding of the council. And I think that's been recognised to date as well across the administration. So when Councillor Caniford talks about safety valves, I just want to strengthen some of those safety valves in this report. And essentially what I want to try and guard against is the classic kind of, you get a builder in to do some work and they tell you it's going to be 200 quid. You get halfway through, they pulled your fireplace apart and they tell you it's going to be £5,000. So I think we can do that, and I've got every confidence in the team that we could do that if we can look at, during the procurement process, of engaging in discussions with potential contractors around transferring some of the risk or sharing some of the risk or capping some of the costs. So I'm going to read my amendment now that seeks to do this. So it's point 4, which will be to approve the proposed commissioning plan for the works required to restore the pier, and to ask that the procurement plan is prepared for approval in accordance with the contract standing orders and in consultation with the Section 151 officer and leader. That's as per it was. This is the key bit. The procurement plan and tendering process should be constructed so as to mitigate risks to the council by maximising the construction risk to be held by the contractor and a fixed financial ceiling for the project within the available funding. Okay, so that's what the amendment is. Again, council will make the decision obviously when it comes back, but hopefully it'll act as a guide to strengthen those safety valves. Thank you.
Proposer, are you happy with that? Right, any debate? Councillor Charles?
Particularly with reference to the last subject we debated, what is the comms plan behind this? Because I can see many people saying that we're giving mixed messages, even though you've made it categorically clear that at this stage, people tend to not listen to that. They listen to the fact that we are talking about tough decisions, we are talking about cutting support to people, and then we talk about multi-million-pound schemes. It's going to look really bad unless there's really good and robust communications. Can I have some reassurance on that?
So it seemed quite clear.
Chairman, I don't know if Mark wants to, but it does strike me that the comms have been very carefully worked out between all of the parties involved, which is this council and the funding agencies, and everybody has had to agree to the wording and keep very strictly to it. So that has been fully understood. And I think there has been a huge amount of coverage in the press. Maybe you've not seen it, but I think we've all worked very hard to make sure that the proper story gets out. And I think we've succeeded in that. I certainly hope we have. Maybe you've not. Maybe it's not reached Portishead. I don't know. It's reached across the world, but who knows? I don't know if Mark has anything further to add to
Councillor Shopland. Councillor Shopland.
Chairman, I do remember another peer being discussed. We won't go down that now. I asked a question when this first came up, Mr. Chairman, as to what were the arrangements for the future management and the future prospects and the future objectives of the pier going to be when it was completed. I was promised a reply, but I've never had one yet.
Councillor Holland.
I'd just like to back up what Caritas said. I was actually thinking to myself, it's lovely hearing about the money that we've been awarded. It's fantastic hearing that we've actually got this project underway. But I'm fed up of hearing, why are we spending all this money and having to defend North Somerset Council? Well, it's not us spending the money, we're being given. It's not our residents' money, we're being given the money. I don't know what plan you're thinking of, but it really isn't actually getting out to the residents at all. I've seen Facebook comments after Facebook conversation after conversation personally, people ranting at me. Why are you spending all this money? And I'm just up to here. We have our esteemed reporter in the room, and I know that we have a great, the newspaper reports about this. They do back up what we're saying, but people aren't reading it. And not everybody does read the North Somerset Times. Not everybody does read the papers, the free papers, the paid-for papers. Unfortunately, the message isn't getting out. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Councillor Solomon? I don't normally like
I'd just like
exec members talk about exec members, but still.
Sorry? I was just going to actually make a personal comment rather than respond about Facebook comments. I see hundreds and hundreds of them about Birnbeck, and I have to say there are still a few, as Caritas has pointed out, and Nicola, that will say, why didn't we spend the money on social housing, etc. I see those, but I would say that over 95% of the comments I see do understand, but there always will be a minority of people out there that don't get the message, I'm afraid, no matter what you say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So, thank you for the input there, and I think it's just a slight correction. First of all, there will be no decision, even if it is within budget, on engaging a contractor before this council has decided. So even if it comes in well under budget, council will still make that decision. And Councillor Charles, in terms of the comms plan, I mean, it is frustrating, isn't it? And you know as well as I do, because I've been in Portishead, we try so hard. We have a very, very good dedicated comms officer, Lucy Harris. She puts out hundreds of posts. The press print many stories. I really don't know what else councillors can suggest that we do. We all know, I get it here in Weston as well, we should spend it on potholes. But for Pete's sake, what do? Hand 21 million back to the government and say, nah, we'll let it fall into the sea because you won't let us spend it on potholes. Why should lottery players want to fit potholes? They already pay their council tax and their government taxes. So if you can tell us how we can get to those public members easier, you keep telling me there are different ways of doing it. I've never heard them, because you know as well as I do, it is, if people don't want to listen, they simply don't listen. And I think there is a very clear, in the south of the district, and you know I've worked really hard to try and join those two together over the years. People in Portishead are resentful if we spend money in Weston, even if it's not their money. That's the frustration, and that's what you're talking about. However, we do have a really, really comprehensive plan around our comms, and I'm happy to talk to you further about that and how we could possibly make that reach further. Because if the residents of Portishead aren't understanding that this isn't council tax money, we're doing something slightly wrong, and I'm willing to try and help with that and see if we can improve that. In terms of Councillor Shopland, we did answer that the last time. The landside buildings, which work will start on early next year, which will include a cafe and the renovation of the house, that income will go into helping run the pier. there'll be entry fees, there'll be a business plan to help generate the income so we don't end up falling down the same rabbit hole again in 10, 20 years' time. So there is a plan in place. We are looking at every opportunity to raise funds, and this has been scrutinised, and these are still the plans that we're going ahead with. So I think it's just one clear thing about the comms plan is the Burnbeck project has probably had the most likes and the most comments of any project that we've ever done. And therefore, people in places are recognising the work, except not everywhere. But in places it is being recognised. But always happy to learn a lesson on how we can engage. So I hope members will support the recommendations with the amendment in place.
All in favour? Any against? And Tom, I'm sorry we missed you when you put your hand up. Sorry. Right, number 9. Who's taking number 9?
I am.
Finish your chocolate?
Yeah, I finished my chocolate, yeah, thank you. This is the Climate Emergency Strategy and Action Plan update, which I'm presenting on behalf of Annemieke Waite, Councillor Waite, who is unable to attend this evening, and I apologise, my voice is going. So I apologise in advance that I will speak a little bit at length on this, because I want to make sure I do justice to the work that Annemieke and our climate team have done progressing the strategy and action plan. And just in the context of having done a number of budget engagement events over the last couple of weeks, can I just remind everyone we've got an unbelievably tiny climate emergency team. So when we talk about climate emergency work and the action plan, some of our residents think that we're spending millions of pounds on apologies to my colleagues across the room, green nonsense. And it's just not true. You know, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny team and a tiny proportion of what the council spends. So our focus is absolutely still on our core services, but we are absolutely taking seriously our responsibilities to the climate emergency, and this strategy and action plan talks to some of the things that we've achieved already in terms of delivering change, in terms of cutting costs and helping our environment. So this is the regular 6-month report that we bring to Council, and it's obviously particularly good timing because we've got COP29 taking place in Baku at the moment, when we all hope that international leaders will make more commitments and stronger action in terms of tackling the climate emergency. And I think it's just worth remembering again that we've got to act locally as well as thinking about those international solutions. So the report sets out the progress that we've made in terms of reducing the council's own emissions, area-wide emissions and project activity in relation to our climate emergency action plan. In terms of the council's own emissions, since 2018 we have seen an overall 26% reduction against baseline, including in the last year a reduction from 8,463 tonnes to 7,889 tonnes. Across the area, total emissions have dropped by 557 kilotonnes since 2005, and in the past year there's been further progress. But however, in both of those cases, the progress that we are making is not fast enough to be delivering on the ambitions that we have set to be net zero by 2030. So we absolutely are not in a situation where we can take our foot off or reduce in any way our commitment to tackling these issues. In fact, we need to strengthen and redouble our efforts. Part of that will be achieved through the energy strategy, which is mentioned in the report, and also through the net zero pathway that officers are preparing and working on at the moment, particularly in terms of what we can do to do better on our own emissions and outputs. However, the reality is that, as we've said every year since we declared a climate emergency, real progress really does depend on the UK government moving to a more comprehensive and long-term approach, both to funding and to energy standards at a national level. We've had really good support and engagement with our local MPs and with regional partners to continue pressing government on that point. And there has been some positive movement in recent months, including the confirmation of the Future Homes Standard. The report talks about some of the practical things that we've been doing and the projects that we've been delivering to support the drop in emissions targets. So some of those include £2.3 million of external funding coupled with support from Sport England to deliver energy improvements and solar panels at Hutton Moor Leisure Centre. So that's both reduced the carbon footprint and reduced operating costs, so a real win-win. We're currently going through the process of renewing the NSEC fleet, and as part of that we will be purchasing 2 EV vehicles to test their suitability and financial return for the longer term, with a view to increasing those in the future. Councillor Young has mentioned before the funding that we've secured through First Bus and the Department for Transport to cover the costs of 24 electric buses for the important X1 and X4 routes. So good, solid progress there. And I'm pleased to say that the second round of the Solar Together scheme saw over 400 installations of domestic solar panels across North Somerset, which was more than any other area in the west of England, which has not just cut bills for residents, but also, again, helped to reduce emissions. And the third round of that scheme is open now. And what these projects do show is that when we're given the funding and when we're given the tools to take action locally, it works and it has positive impacts, both in terms of climate change and in terms of the bottom line for us as a council and for our residents. We know that we can't do it on our own, and partnerships with businesses, with the private and voluntary and community sector, and with regional partners are critical to delivering long-term success. But I'm very happy to propose the report, and I would encourage all colleagues to read it and to engage in this work as much as possible, because if we don't embed these approaches in everything that we do all the time as a council, we are never ever going to achieve the step change that we need. Thanks.
Seconder. Any debate?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly, so thanks Mike for presenting the report, and thanks your thanks to officers and Annemieke is absolutely seconded. Chunky report has come through scrutiny. I have to say I still find it quite hard to grapple with the scope of these reports, but you know, my bad. I think I could pick out a number of details. Mike, the investment in Hutton Moor I think is a really significant, really impactful. I wanted to pick out one detail, which was on page 74, under priority 7, second bullet point, which I'll read out, which is transport infrastructure vulnerability mapping is making good progress, with 80% of A roads having been assessed for risks such as flood risks, heat and subsidence. So obviously, arguably less of an impact, for example, compared to the flooding of homes and property, which we were discussing earlier. The resilience of our highway network, I think, is a key concern for our residents, and I think probably everyone in this room. So in March, in scrutiny, we invited highways officers to come and talk to us about the council's approach to road maintenance and the constraints on us as a council. And one ask we made was that a highways annual report should come forward annually through scrutiny from next March 2025. So it would be good if that annual report could give some visibility to that vulnerability mapping exercise. So it's a bit of a nerdy comment, but if that could be noted, but totally support what's in the report. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Thomas, did you signal?
No, I didn't, Chair. Did
Councillor Petty?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike, for presenting this report and your commitment to the report in the absence of Annemieke. And I'd like to, I know that you reiterated a number of times that the team is extremely small. It kind of can't get any smaller, but we could do with it getting bigger. But people might have heard me say that before, because I've only been saying it for 5 years. Okay. Can we all confidently, as elected politicians, say we are doing all we can to protect and prepare our communities for climate change? I think that evidence does suggest it is those least economically able who will experience the impacts first and hardest. I would like to add a recommendation to this report that the executive member write to the government to ask what they are doing to support local authorities to deliver for communities locally around climate impacts and finances to support this and net zero ambitions. The reason I say that is because I think of Spain that had more than 200 people die last month. People are protesting there now that local politicians, that they should have done more. Will that be us one day? I don't think it's too much to ask that we add to this report that we write to the new Labour government and ask them to continue to support our work on a local level. Thank you.
Anybody else want to say no? Yeah.
Yes, I'd like to support Councillor Petty. I think my sense of this is I welcome the report. There's lots of good things. 26% reduction, but on that rate, we're not going to hit net zero for council-owned assets till 2040. And I think the reality is without government support, we won't. And we've just seen a budget where there's lots of support for lots of things, but what there wasn't was a single mention of the word climate or nature in the entire 77 minutes of the budget, which doesn't get my support, would be a polite way of putting it. So absolutely, I'd second that if we could write to the government and ask for more financial and other freedoms to allow us to meet our net zero and nature emergency ambitions.
Councillor Pepperell.
Thank you. It's one thing I'm curious about. There's a lot of out-of-town shops, depots, little factories and things. Do we encourage or can we even force them to put solar panels? They have very large roofs and it would seem an awful waste if they don't.
No other speakers, but I'm just picking up something that was said earlier about Spain. You don't very often have someone in the chamber that can give you first-hand information about Spain, but my place was in the Valencia region, which I've just sold. And one of the reasons they had the problem is because of a European ruling, they've had to undam all their rivers. And that has caused a big problem because there was even flooding recently near where I had a place. It was only because they'd taken the dams away in the river. Anyway, summing up.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate all of the comments from everyone. Steve, really good points, and I know that the point about the highway network resilience and regular reporting has been picked up by the team, so I'm sure that will continue to happen. And can I thank the Transport, Climate and Communities Policy and Scrutiny Panel for the good work that they've continued to do. Bridget. Yep, we need a bigger boat. We absolutely do, and I think that's why that point about continuing to lobby government is so important, because I think we really can evidence impact. We just need the tools to do the job. So I'm very happy to support that in terms of the exec member writing to government and raising our concerns again, and Ash alluded to that as well. Marsha's point about the business community, we can certainly try and do more in terms of our comms to encourage the right behaviours. We have been funding business grants, green business grants through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, and that has led to impacts and positive benefits for businesses, but we'd like to do more of it, and it comes back again to that issue of funding, so we'll certainly continue to do what we can there. And we definitely need the government to go further and faster on planning regulations. You know, it is absolutely crazy that we're still building brand new homes that are not fit for the future in terms of their energy efficiency, you know, solar first and so on. So there's more to be done there. And can I just, again, in finalising, just thank Annemieke and the team for all of their hard work. This is a critical area for us, not just in terms of the climate, but in terms of value for money and efficiency in the long run. And they've done great work with really limited resources. And in particular, can I thank Annemieke for the work that she's done to really make sure that the directorates and exec members take ownership of this, because I think there have been too many occasions where the climate work has been seen as something that's in a separate box somewhere and is not really anything to do with the rest of us. And Annemieke has really continued to bang the drum that this is something for all of us to take responsibility for, exactly as Bridget was alluding to. So I absolutely thank Annemieke and the team for all their work, and thank colleagues for their support.
Right, all those in favour? Well, carried. Any against? Thank you very much. Councillor Canford, Wraxall and Phelan Neighbourhood Plan.
Thank you, Chair. This shouldn't be controversial. We're asked to make the neighbourhood plan for Wraxall and Phelan. They went to referendum on the 19th of September. 95.91% of the votes cast were in favour of making that plan and supporting that plan. As you'll know, this will allow the parish to claim 25% of the SIL rather than 15% of any development plans in their area. However, the plan does not allocate any housing sites in the parish, but there is a major application now for 381 houses in North Nelsey. However, the parish council have objected to that development. Just because we have to keep mentioning budgets and the difficulty the council is under, we do get funded this, the neighbourhood planning grant of £20,000 against our costs for the examination and the referendum, so it does have no cost to this council. So I'm looking for support for to make this plan for the residents of Wraxall and Phelan.
Seconded, yeah. Any comments? All in favour? Any against? Thank you very much. Item 11, we're going with item 13 for Catherine. So we're now on question time. So if you'd like to put your hands up, Solicitor will record the names, then we'll get started.
First one I got was Councillor Keating.
Yeah.
Then I've got Dawn, Tristram, Petty, Reich, Burton, Payne, Charles, and Crockett-Hawley.
Right, so we've got Councillor Keating. Dawes? Yes? Oh, okay. Petty?
Tristram.
Right, Tristram? Burden? Payne? Charles and Crockett-Hawley in the end. Right, first one. Councillor Keating.
Thank you, Chair. Question for Councillor Gibbons, please. Could the executive member please comment on reports that there is a threat of judicial review to the application for a badly needed SMEH school, the application by the DFE in Churchill, and what the Council's position would be if such a review is indeed taken forwards?
Yes, thank you for that. I think you know that we both support the building of this much-needed school for Lime Hills, which is already in existence in a number of temporary locations and delivering great support for children who really need it. I certainly support this application, and I would want to see the progression to contractors being on site as soon as possible. As you know, this is a Department for Education application and not a North Somerset Council scheme. If there is action towards a judicial review, I'd like to hope that the pre-action responses would provide the reassurances that the planning process and the decision-making process was secure, so that then if the applicant doesn't want to take it onto the full stage of objection, because we believe that the decision-making process was really robust and some of the objections that might come up have been covered. I've got quite a detailed list and I'm well aware of the need for brevity and not bombarding people with a lot of facts, so I will supply that to you in a written form if that's okay. And I suppose just to say to any of the residents in the area who might well be listening, you know, both Councillor Keating and I have met with people and with the parish council and tried as far as possible to allay their fears. I do understand how it feels, because there's been a lot of building in Churchill, and I'm not somebody who doesn't know the area, because until 2010 my family lived there. So I'm not someone who doesn't understand the pressures of the development that has gone on in the Langford area. But equally, I believe that this will be a valuable and, I would say, respected asset to the community once it's built. I know that that's the case for many of our schools that deal with SEND needs. It's not going to be something that will overly impact the community negatively, though we've tried to be sensitive to the needs. And as I say, I'm confident that the application was robust, and certainly I will do what I can to support it. I hope that's enough, Councillor Keating.
Councillor Daw.
Mine's for Hannah Young. I think you're the only person I've actually asked any questions to, and I've been here almost a year now, so sorry. My parish council I was asked a couple of times over the last couple of months about the 30-mile-an-hour scheme that we're expecting with the BSIP work. With Wood Hill ending soon, do we know when we can get a reply as to when we'll be expecting that work?
I don't have the answer to that question right now, but I'll certainly chase it up with the officers and make sure you have a reply about the timescale for that 30 mile an hour. It's obviously on the cards. We've had some extension of Wood Hill, as you know, as you've said, but apologies they haven't had that, and we'll get you a timescale as soon as I can with those officers involved.
Councillor Tristram.
Thank you. This is a question for Councillor Solomon, and it's about the Tropicana. Could we have an update on where we are in the process of getting commercial interest in running it? Thank you.
Yes, with the process has been going forward, we've now had the formal bids in from various companies. The team involved are now in the process of bringing it down to a short list of 3, and that they will be looked into imminently. So we're very close to that process of finding a concession or a company to take over the Tropicana. So we're looking to have that process put in place within a few months.
Councillor Petty.
I think this is a question for Councillor Caniford. As you know, I represent Backwell, which is near to Bristol Airport, and I'm thinking of the impact that Bristol Airport currently has on my local residents. The residents of Backwell have been having many sleepless nights, which impacts their mental health and well-being and the health of their children. We have cars coming and going at antisocial hours and parking issues in our local area. The current planning permission that the airport has a strict number of antisocial and overnight flights at 4,000 flights per year, and we understand that is the restriction that they have been given. However, I wanted to make the Chamber aware and Councillor Caniford aware that there are these things called discretionary flights where you have exceptional circumstances. So, okay, we've got an allowance of 4,000 a year. And when I think of exceptional circumstances, something that I would hope happens rarely. So far, we have had 696 discretionary flights this year so far. I'm a little baffled at how that number has crept to being so high. Are we taking this labelling of discretionary flights seriously? And do councillors feel confident that the airport is correctly using those labels, but also taking appropriate measures against companies that are flying in and out of the airport that are breaching the standard conditions that they've agreed to? I say this with concerns because, as I say, the impact on my local residents is significant. I am getting regular contact about how their sleep is being impacted, but we also have been made aware this month that the airport plans to go for further planning permission for a larger expansion. I have concerns if they're not meeting their current conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jitt. And yes, I'm aware of the concerns that are being aired in your ward and in the wards around as well, as Tom has mailed me on a few occasions. The rules are, and these are national set rules, is the airport monitors those numbers itself and it sends us the data. In terms of what is a discretionary reason, it could be because they take off late where they're going, so we're not in, or the airport is not in control of necessarily the reasons why a flight might be late. I do, however, understand the premise of the question, because I've recently been away and there was about 6 flights came in at 10 to 12, which clearly isn't possible because there's 7 minutes between each flight, isn't there, as you possibly will be aware. So it's simply not possible to do that. So the planning, there are questions have been asked, and in terms of, I'm not going to comment on the planning application or their master plan that they're looking forward, but I think as part of that, we need to challenge those discretionary flights and ask how they can argue that 10 flights or 5 flights or 8 flights coming in a 10-minute period is possible, because we simply know it's not. So I'm happy to work with the local members, because I do understand the frustrations. I do think we need to be really careful, and we do need a joint-up approach around the effects of the airport, because during the last objection to the last planning, we lost some of the benefits that were being offered because the inspectorate didn't necessarily agree with those. So let's make sure we take every advantage we can if the airport are likely to ask for more, and make sure that our residents get all the best benefits of that before we object simply on everything. So because it's the residents which count, and in terms of your ward, the residents need to be heard. So, yeah, I fully understand that, and I will keep pushing to ask questions, especially during their master planning stage as well.
Councillor Pryke.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to the leader. Given his comments at the last meeting of the Executive about the efficiency and work of the Executive Member for Adult Services, who covers half the budget of this council and has brought this council to the brink of a financial crisis, does the leader still have confidence in him?
Yes.
Councillor Burden.
This question is on behalf of Councillor Ellis to the Leader of the Council. The last time the Council tried for a bus lane at Backwell Lights, the reaction from the public was anger. The local councillors said before the consultation, don't go ahead with it. Following the latest briefing on bus lanes at Backwell traffic lights, Councillor Young said that there will be no public consultation after I stated that there should be. She stated people can have their say at a later stage. As we all know, it will be too late by then. This view has been reiterated by the Backwell councillor. I have been asked for the members of the public and local councillors. There has been no response as yet. Sorry, Chairman, I'm having difficulty reading this one. Sorry. No, it doesn't help me with my reading this one.
I've got the gist.
This is just reconfirming that the people stand. Sorry, yeah, I think you get it already.
I think I've got the gist.
Will you make sure there's consultation?
Yeah, and I'm going to refer this to Councillor Young, because obviously as the relevant exec member, she's dealing with this issue.
Yeah, and I'm slightly confused about what Councillor Ellis has said about the nature of that briefing. We are working through the Backwell proposals, as we said that we would, to residents in the information that we put out earlier in the summer, and we've kept the parish council updated on the fact that we're doing that. I know there has been some frustration with the amount of time it's taken, but during that period we've also been reviewing in the pause and review the whole kind of set of infrastructure schemes. So it's not simply Backwell we've been working on. Since the data has been looked at more fully by council officers, there has been a briefing for Nailsea and Backwell Nailsea and Backwell ward members. Obviously, Councillor Ellis came. I believe that I said in that briefing that there would not, at this point, be another open consultation, as in an in-consult process. We've made no decision about what further engagement might be needed. We have a meeting scheduled with the Parish Council on the 26th of November to share the current proposals with them, and they are not final proposals, they are proposals in development. I'm also very keen to be able to brief the members, the ward members who were not able to attend the previous briefing. And I've had some correspondence, particularly with Councillor Bird, who wasn't able to attend just today. He's back from leave. Certain councillors I haven't heard back from Nailsy at all. We are working through that process, and we will take decisions as we go. I know Councillor Ellis has made it quite clear to me in an email yesterday that he intends to call in the Backwell decision, and I know that the parish council are also very concerned that a decision might be coming to the executive on the 4th of December. Can I just make it clear that it's an executive member decision, so there's nothing coming to executive on the 4th of December about this scheme. We're not ready to even put together a decision paper at this point in time because we're working through the process of talking to people. When we are ready to do that, if we get that far, then that obviously will be publicised in the normal way. And of course, depending on what decision happens, Councillor Ellis can make a choice as to whether he wishes to call it in or not. But in the point about consultation, at the very least, any scheme of this nature would have to be subject to further statutory consultation. So that will absolutely be taking place. But it's my full intention that we will continue working our way through the engagement process and that we will give the parish council on the 26th the full opportunity to have their say about that, as well as other things. And we will continue to work through things as we go on that basis. That's my commitment.
Thank you. Can I thank Councillor Young for that very detailed response to half a question?
Councillor Payne.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a question for the leader. Many small businesses and charities in North Somerset are really worried about the hike in national insurance announced by the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the budget a couple of weeks ago. Do you share my concern that this council too will be hit by this jobs tax because of the effect it will have on the costs of employing our staff, particularly given the problems that we already have in our finances and budget planning? The government has indicated that they may help funding some of the direct impact for our own staff, but they certainly won't cover suppliers such as social care providers and contractors, including NSEC, which will add to our costs. Although the actual costs of all this is as yet unknown, could I ask you to ensure that members are kept informed of the effects on the MTFP and budget planning when these are known?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Payne. Very well-made point. We do know that the government has committed to funding the direct costs of local government and other government departments, but you're absolutely right. What they haven't committed to at this point is any funding for third parties. So whether that's commissioned arrangements with the private sector, or with the voluntary and community sector. And it's worth noting that we do have a number of areas across public health, adults and children's social care and beyond, where we absolutely commission others and support others to provide services on behalf of the community, and they will all be impacted by the proposed national insurance rise. We're absolutely making representations about that through the Local Government Association and through our local MPs, and we hope when we get the final local government settlement that there'll be some further movement from the government, because I'm sure that they are listening to the feedback. But I have to say the voluntary and community sector in particular I am concerned about, because we know that there's been a squeeze on funding in terms of fundraising income by the voluntary and community and social enterprise sector. We know that they're under pressure in terms of funding from public bodies and from local government, and it absolutely is an additional cost that they can ill afford. So we'll be absolutely doing what we can to work in solidarity with them to highlight those concerns to government. And absolutely we'll share details of the impacts when we know them.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you. I did send this to both Mark and Mike, so I'm not too sure which Mike's going to answer. Great. Will the executive member give reassurance to the public and town councils that in any negotiations to take over the running of NS, North Somerset Council run services such as car parking, that it is done on a cost-neutral basis and that the only costs to parish and town councils will be the running costs?
So I really welcome the question because it gives me the opportunity to talk about the Delivering Together programme that we are engaged in at the moment with town and parish councils, where we're talking about, in principle, what are things that are appropriate to be delivered at a more local level, whether that's because they can been done more cost effectively or with more local influence or just in a better way at a local level, but also where town and parish councils can help us with our financial challenges, whether that's because we're forced to make cuts which communities don't want to see, or whether that's because we are proposing increased fees and charges in some areas. What I can tell you is that the principle that we're adopting on that is that where North Somerset has a net income from an asset, if a town council wants to take over responsibility for managing it, then we expect that net income to be matched by the town or parish council. And where there isn't a net income, then a different arrangement applies. So I hope that answers the question.
And finally, my fellow chain wearer, Councillor Crawford-Hawley.
Question to Councillor Caniford. Local government is often blamed for the demise of high streets, but sometimes there's a direct link between decrepitude and individual property owners. Would the executive member agree that post-war Lance's Corner at the junction of Waterloo Street and High Street in Weston-super-Mare is now in a serious state of visual decay, and that a dozen of these badly run-down retail units, which I'm led to believe are in the ownership of a local businessman and former member of this council, are a blot upon our urban landscape? I'm aware that certain tenants have been or are in occupancy disputes with the freeholder, though of course I couldn't possibly comment upon the accuracy of these matters. I note also that the property owner exhibits signs which give a misleading impression that his business is somehow part of this council's Western regeneration aims and objectives, insomuch as he uses font design and wording that could infer linkage with this council's regeneration and placemaking objectives. Would the executive member give a categorical assurance that this particular freeholder is not in any way associated with this council's policy making, and might he care to remind this gentleman that he has no association with any official body and ought to desist from exhibiting potentially misleading signage?
Thank you, Councillor Crawford-Hawley. It's a very, it's a good question in the sense that Councillor Collin and I walked together or paraded together past this site, and I think we commented together on Sunday at the Armistice Day Parade how shocking that this area in Weston-super-Mare has become. It used to be a very busy and prosperous area because I used to trade in simply round the corner, but it now looks absolutely dreadful and unused. We are at this time, the last government looked at introducing a high street prosperity auction, which a high street property auction ability to councils, and we have only recently just been informed that the current government is also going to continue with this work. This will allow us, and we've already asked our Assistant Director, Jenny Ford, to look into this for us, to give us the ability to designate an area, and this would be simply one of them, to become an area for this auction. And this would allow businesses or allow people to bid for a shop or lease a shop which has been empty for 12 months in a 2-year period. So it will allow businesses to have an opportunity to get a cheaper rent, but force the landlords to start looking at either renting their properties at a reasonable rent and stop being unrealistic about some of the requests that are being made. Because you're quite right, it doesn't just simply ruin a parade of shops in all of our towns, it ruins whole areas, and we do need to do something about it. So we are going to have a report around what can be done. Unfortunately, currently the government is only proposing a 1.5 million fund for the whole country to sort this, and therefore it will put a lot of pressure on ourselves if we choose to do it. But I do think something needs to be done, and I can assure you that I will be pursuing the opportunity to do that. In terms of the font designs were made public during the placemaking work done in 2020 for anyone to use on signs and posts. But you are quite right, and I'll talk to the solicitor to see what we can do about warning him off trying to make himself look like he is part of the regeneration of Weston, especially when he's doing no regeneration at all.
Thank you. That's the end of question time. We're now in to reports from other committees. So the first one is Councillor Gibbons, taking 11 and 13 together.
That's me, I take it. I was a little confused. It was twice on the agenda. I thought, wow, you know, last but not least, anyway. This is one of my regular updates for you as corporate parents, and it's focusing this time, as you've read in the brief report, on our fostering initiatives and most particularly Mockingbird. I don't know, I think all of you should know by now what Mockingbird is, but basically Mockingbird is a system whereby foster families are gathered around a central hub run by a foster carer who usually doesn't have children in their care, but they are very, very experienced. And essentially, it creates an extended family structure so that the hub home carer can build really strong relationships with everyone in the constellation. Families support each other, overcome problems before they escalate, and it just increases that protective ring around the children. It has huge flexibility to support children and young people throughout the stages of their journey through care, and it fully embraces the ethos that we care about, which is child-centred practice, maintaining relationships, emphasising extended family networks, and ideally reducing bureaucracy. And it's also very supportive of peer relationships for the children of foster carers themselves. So you'll see in the report that we are excited that we've got 2 more Mockingbird constellations coming down the line. And this is about how the people involved, particularly the families, have been giving the identities by choosing some interesting names for their constellations. Ohana, meaning family, and I'm sorry, I don't know in what language that means family, but I think that's a really nice name. And then stars, because it means that our families are bright and shining stars. And these were chosen through a competition involving all the children in the hubs. And following that, there's going to be a real celebration day to honour the new names and a naming ceremony and part of an arts and crafts day. This will take place at a local attraction, which is yet to be confirmed, where all the children will join us to celebrate. I'm hoping that we'll get an opportunity as councillors to attend when this is firmed up, and those of you who want to, just get in touch with me. As always, I welcome any questions about what we can do as corporate parents, and I will be launching my usual appeal around Christmas time for donations to help some of our young people who don't get it automatically. There's the older care leavers.
Any questions?
So, thank you.
Just to comment, Ohana is Hawaiian for family. Just to...
Thank you.
I just knew that.
Thank you. I didn't have such an exotic background, I'm afraid.
Item 14, Licensing Committee. Councillor Davis.
Sorry, what was that, Chair? No.
Licensing Committee for adoption.
Yeah, just to be noted.
Any comment?
Chair, it does need a vote just to adopt the strategy.
Yeah. Any comment?
Is this the licensing one? Sorry.
Yes.
Yes. I have a question for the Chair of Licensing. It's been noted, and we've seen a lot of complaints recently, that anybody that needs a taxi licence that can't get one from our council, because we're very stringent in our tests, can apply to Wolverhampton and very easily get that licence. In fact, they put the answers to their questions on the internet, and we've been quoted figures around most councils doing 400 licences a year, that Wolverhampton do 8,500. And I believe that certain individuals that wouldn't get a licence in this town, because again we're very stringent in that, can just get one from Wolverhampton. And if you look at the plates, you'll see. So I'm just wanted to know if there's something that licence are doing about it, the government are doing about it, because it's obviously something that needs to be put into law.
Yes, I appreciate the question, Mike. It is really important because it's something to be discussed around safety, especially within North Somerset. You're quite right. There are so many taxis flying around the town that are from that neck of the woods. You can see the plating on the back of the taxis. It's very difficult for us to remain impartial for people to use taxis, but a lot of taxis that are sent to certain people are from that licensing department. The local licensing team have been in contact with the governmental database on these revocations of taxi drivers' licences, and you're quite right. It's been noted that that we have revoked licences, and then these people have gone up to get the licences through the other licensing department, which is nowhere near our geographic area. So in light of that, what we've done is tried to look at a way of negating this procedure and the way that this can be circumvented. So all I can say is that just watch this space at the moment and see how we're going to tackle that issue. But what I'd like to mention to my fellow colleagues within the council is that my concern as the licensing committee is a safety one, because some of these people that are getting the licenses shouldn't be having them. And that's a real concern, because I think what it does, it puts it at our doorstep if something were to go wrong. And let's think of it, if we've got children here and people are taking taxis that are 13, 14 years of age, we need to know that these people are being transported safely. So I think it's something that we'll have to revisit in the new year.
Right, can we have a seconder for the adoption? Yeah, I'm looking for a seconder of the adoption first. Right, thank you. Right, Councillor Dole.
Yes, I just wanted to add on to what Mike was saying about the taxis and them coming from other local authorities. It was also mentioned in the meeting that our home to school transport uses taxis with taxi companies, and we can't guarantee where these taxis come from. And as a corporate parent, it actually concerns me a little bit that, us ourselves as a council are using these taxis to transport some very vulnerable young people, and what action we can possibly do, whether that, to Catherine, Hannah and Joe here on SIPs, and what we can do to maybe mitigate against this, or maybe if it is just that we need to start talking to other local authorities for them to get stricter on their licensing.
Councillor Bird.
Can I ask a question on the street trading principles? Nelsey Town is owned by a company called Praxis. They own another 15 town centres around the country, and they have a very positive policy towards street trading, markets as a way to boost the economy and startups. Unfortunately, they see North Somerset as one of the most restrictive and costly street trading rules of all their places. They make efforts elsewhere, but they don't feel it viable in Nelsey because of the restrictions in North Somerset. And I wondered whether that could be looked into.
Yes, I'll have a look at that for you. We did mention the costings of street trading. It was brought up recently at a recent licensing subcommittee. So, yeah, I'll look into that for you and come back with an email, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Clayton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just want to bring the conversation back in relation to the taxi licences and around the issue around licences being issued by Wolverhampton. Licensing does fall in my portfolio and it has been brought to my attention. Just want to correct Councillor Dorr in relation to other local authorities. We need to be specific here that actually it's just one other authority that are issuing taxi licences, and that is from Wolverhampton. Now, I can tell you that the MP is involved in this. It has been brought to his attention by a taxi driver. I was there when this taxi driver came and spoke to to the MP. I've given the MP a detailed account of the issues around the taxi licensing. Unfortunately, it is a loophole, and what I can say is that I'm proud, and along with the chairman of licensing, we are proud that North Somerset are strict in relation to issuing taxi licence, because it is a very important subject around safety. But unfortunately, I'm not going to name the company, but there is one company in Weston that once the drivers have failed their application for a licence in North Somerset, they are directing them straight to Wolverhampton. So we need to now really tighten up on this, and the MP is involved, and the MP will be speaking to his colleagues in Wolverhampton around this issue.
Can you someone put the end? In case there's something else. Councillor Petty.
I think I have 2 points actually out of both of the different subjects that have come up. The issue that Councillor Bird raised, I also would like to be part of the email loop, because as I understand, it was on my to-do list to come to talk to licensing about the issues that I've heard where local groups wish to hold an event but are told that every single stall must have its own licensing fee, and it seems like a very prohibitive to accessing and community events. And I apologise for not raising that in advance, but if I could be part of the conversation loop. Going back to, and thank you, Councillor Clayton, for what you were raising and how you're taking it forward at this time. Could we consider at this time, given that there is a loophole, could we put out some comms and have a press release about raising awareness so the public, when they get in a taxi and order a taxi, they can look to see whether the licence was granted by North Somerset or by Wolverhampton, because I, as a person getting in a vehicle, can see, there where that I can't I think, where the licence was given. So I believe that we, with a comms team, could put out, but we could also look to work with our pubs and our outdoor venues and things like that, so that, because, for example, campaigns like Call Angela, or like things on the back of doors that can alert people when they're going home safely to that North Somerset awarded licences are more robust, but maybe it's worth looking out for ones that are not North Somerset, because they do not go to the same standards. I think that it's okay to say there's a loophole, and it's okay to say that there's comms. I just would like us to consider that if we could, even though there's an ongoing solution. I'm just thinking about our vulnerable people now. Thank you.
Now, I've only got actually Councillor Gibbons going on, but this is about adopting a strategy. Those sort of questions need to go to the committee in general. So if it's about the strategy, Catherine.
Thank you. Actually, Councillor Clayton did raise a few of the points I was going to, but just to reassure Councillor Dorr that we are very much aware of any risks to young people who are taking taxis on their own bat. And in terms of us supplying taxis, we're very careful. We don't just kind of put vulnerable people in random taxis. There is a process, and I work with Hannah very closely on home to school transport and the companies that we use. However, I just will mention that when I was in Liverpool recently at a conference, it was a major complaint amongst taxi drivers there that half their taxis are licensed in Wolverhampton as well.
Stu, would you like to sum up?
Yeah, I just want to mention a couple of things, which is really important. One is we have got a communication from our licensing officers now directly with Wolverhampton. They have made sure that there is some communication going on. We've also obviously discussed the legalities of being biased towards other licence holders from other areas that can legally operate within North Somerset. So that's something that needs to be looked at very carefully. I think off the back of that, I think that just in closing, the main thing is that we've now got a rapport with the council. They are well aware of what's going on and why they're getting these referrals and why they're issuing so many licences. And I think that you're now talking, as Councillor Clayton said, we're now looking at a higher level of intervention. So it's all going in the right direction, and we're well aware of it. Thank you.
Right, all in favour of adoption of the report? Thank you. Any against? Thank you very much. Now we've got the same thing on Audit Committee.
Chair, if I can do with this one, this is only a report back from the Audit Committee. You'll recall that Caritas Charles brought a motion earlier in the year asking that if petitions reached a certain level of signatures, they were either referred here for debate or to a policy and scrutiny panel. Just to report back that that was dealt with by audit and has now been put into place. I've changed the constitution and the website is now updated, advising people of the new rules.
So, everybody understand that? Everybody happy? Yeah? Okay, thank you very much. Reports from joint, no written submissions from outside bodies.
Chair, can I raise a point of order under agenda item 9? To correct the record, please.
I don't know, I've been in bed since then.
I'm aware we've moved on, but I just want to correct something that was said earlier, please.
Go on in.
You're in response to Councillor Petty, you mentioned the cause of the Valencia floods. The Valencia floods were not caused by the removal of dams. I think you've fallen for some classic fake news there.
Sorry, what are you on about?
Sorry, your response earlier to Councillor Petty.
Well, you should have raised it with the Iceman. In fact, I was there, so I know.
So, but can I correct the record for fear we be labelled climate deniers by my friend in the press in the corner, please? Thank you. It's Chair, it's completely false information. The removal of dams only related to small irrigation dams, not reservoir dams. This is from that left-leaning outfit, The Spectator. The floods were caused by the sheer volume of rainfall. Chiva region, near Valencia, the municipality, received 491 litres per square metre in 8 hours, which is equivalent to 1 year's rainfall.
I don't think anybody's arguing that.
It's correcting what you said, sir.
No, I didn't. You missed.
Yes, you,
no,
yes,
I
you
didn't.
did, Chair.
No.
Okay.
I'm not going to.
Perhaps the Chair could review the video after this.
You are wrong. I was right.
I'd like to issue a complaint about the chairing of this meeting.
Announcements. I just have a couple of announcements, ladies and gentlemen. I had hoped to offer you some refreshment this evening, which was the plan, but as you now know, there's nowhere on the ground floor suitable for doing so. Members' room is out of action. The only other one is 58, which has got all the stuff from the election in, which has got to be kept for 12 months. So instead of that, I will invite you all, invitation will come out shortly, for an evening to celebrate Christmas on the 6th of December. So I'll find it. I'll find it. Anything else from Leader? No. Chief Exec?
No, thank you.
Right, I'll leave you with this thought as we end the meeting. We seem to be doing very well if we use in 2 words where 1 would do. So let's try from the next meeting onwards to use 1 word instead of 2. Thank you.
Can I bring forward an amendment to that, Chair?
Yeah.